Woman was taken aback when she discovers what her missing ex-husband was doing for 23 years. But before we start, please give the video a like and make sure to subscribe to Wonderbot and hit the bell so you'll never miss any uploads from us. Life becomes miserable when the person we rely on leaves. All the happiness of the Hoagland family was shattered in front of their eyes as they stood helpless. Decades have passed since the life-altering incident took place. Even today, it gives the family chills. Linda Hoagland's husband, Richard Hoagland, disappeared in broad daylight. She was left all by herself and with 2 sons to look after. Where did he go and why? Was he in trouble, or did he just abandon them? Did he just run away from his responsibilities? Was he still alive? Will he ever come back? Questions like these kept on messing up her mind during all those sleepless nights. The reason that makes us share this story with our viewers today is that Linda got answers to all her questions long after she stopped looking. She made a mistake of loving a coward and paid more than what one could ever imagine for this one mistake. During the 1980s, Linda and Richard met, became good friends, fell in love, got married, and had children, Matthew and Douglas. The couple moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, where they settled in a beautiful house that was perfectly fit for a family of 4. Linda and Richard were a loving couple who were always part of the social gatherings and invited their neighbors on dinner every now and then. Everything about the Hoagland family seemed to be normal until February 1993, when one call changed the course of events and turned Linda's life upside down. It started on one Wednesday afternoon at 4:45 p.m. when Linda got a call from Richard while she was at the office. This was no normal call to check if she had lunch or not. Rather, Richard had something serious to tell her. Linda recalled, "He called me at work and told me that he was ill and that he needed to go to the emergency room. And I said, well, why don't you just wait and I'll go with you? He said, no, I don't have time to wait." She was worried and wanted to be with him, but little did she know by then that it was the beginning of a never-ending mystery. Richard asked her to finish her work first, and hence Linda picked up her younger son, Doug, from daycare. As soon as she received the call, she took a half day off work, and it hardly took her 40 minutes to reach home. When she reached home, her elder son, Matthew, was left alone. Linda grew more worried and did what she thought was the most suitable way to get to know her husband's whereabouts. It was devastating, yet Linda called in all the hospitals in town. Linda was trying to keep calm, but with every passing moment, and with every other local hospital informing her that there was no patient with the name Richard Hoagland, her patience was being tested. His toothbrush was still there. He didn't pack any clothes. It was cold. It was February. He didn't take a coat, recalled Linda. Every holiday season, the Hoaglands used to be out for exotic vacations. He was always making deals and doing things. He was very successful, explained Linda. What she couldn't understand was the cause behind all this. Usually the family seemed like they were financially strong. Linda's mind told her that her husband left her, but her conscience kept on telling her to wait for him. She kept on worrying if Richard was in some kind of danger. But Richard left by his own choice, and Linda understood it when she received a call from him. She couldn't believe it was the same person who kissed her good day that very morning. After leaving his 9-year-old son, Matthew, alone, Richard called and said, "I can't live this way anymore. I feel you'd be better off without me." He didn't even give her a chance to speak. That wasn't the last call from him, though. A few hours later, he called and said, "I don't want to go to jail. I'm never coming back." For a moment, she thought it was all a prank, but her husband abandoned her and her kids. The next morning, more troubles broke loose on her. Richard's personality has always been an outgoing one. He was a loving husband and a caring father. Richard used to say proudly that he was blessed to have his best friend for his wife. Not even his wife was able to guess that he'd been living a dual life all these years. Not even a single sign that something must have been wrong. Later, when Linda tried to think of the signs for anything to be wrong, anything which could have helped in foreseeing what took place, even after giving it a lot of thought, she couldn't think of any such signs. All she could remember was the fact that Richard had been a little disturbed and lost for a few days before he left. When she tried to comfort him, Richard smiled and said that everything was under control. The boys were too young to understand the seriousness of the situation and the impact it would have on their lives. Linda was in this all alone until things started getting worse. Yes, Richard's disappearance wasn't all that Linda had to face. There was much more yet to happen. The incidences that took place gave her nightmares for decades. A reporter asked Linda, "What did you love about him?" She replied, He was a lot of fun to be with." Apparently, he had done some terribly shameful acts and he couldn't face his family after that. What happened so far resulted in police intervention, and the burden increased on the poor lady. How do you walk away from your own children? How do you turn your back? Questions Linda in an interview, who lived most of her life with grave danger. The person she loved wholeheartedly left her and her innocent sons to suffer alone. And 23 years later, when Linda finally got to know what her so-called husband had been up to all these years, it filled her with regrets for loving a coward. A few days later, police were able to locate Richard Hoagland's car parked in the Indianapolis airport. The police took help of the airlines, but there was no record of a passenger named Richard Hoagland. Cops knocked at Linda's house, not to tell her that her husband was nowhere to be found, but to question her about her part in all that Richard has left behind. Linda just couldn't understand what it was the cops were trying to know from her, but it wouldn't be too long before the whole picture appears in front of her. Instead of being empathetic with the lady, cops were cross-questioning her and were compelling her to admit that she was part of the conspiracy with her ex-husband. Linda couldn't understand even a bit of what they were saying until she hired a lawyer who analyzed the whole situation and explained it to her. Richard was facing big-time financial problems, and no one was aware of it. Things stopped being in Richard's favor long back. Instead of sharing it with his wife, he chose a fraudulently method to get over the crisis. What started to fix the mess actually became a habit, and Linda was kept completely out of this. Richard maxed out most of the cards he owned. When he couldn't get any more cards issued, he forged Linda's signature. He even took a loan from the local bank in Linda's name before running away. There were 26 overdue credit cards, bills that had been unpaid for months, and other outstanding loans. Linda had no other choice but to file for a divorce. Sadly, this problem was out of her hands, and just a divorce wouldn't make anything normal. The cops were trying to tell Linda that filing for bankruptcy was the only option, but she wasn't the one responsible for all these pending bills and loans. Also, Linda just worked part-time to keep herself occupied, not to earn. Her husband was the breadwinner of the family. She even failed to pay her car's loan and mortgage, so divorce wasn't going to solve her problems. When she did file divorce, the judge made a decision in her favor. The orders were clear that Richard was the one who was responsible for all the debts and Linda had no hand in it. Linda could notice strangers following her in public areas. It was like someone was keeping an eye on her actions 24/7. Who were these people? Richard called Linda a couple times and cops tried to track him down. Once his location was in Aruba and the next time Venezuela. After enormous attempts, Linda made up her mind that he will never return and she'll never get the chance to question him for all that he's done. Above all, her own life and her kids' lives seemed to be in danger. The last attempt Richard made to contact his family was through the mail. The mail had $50 for each of his sons and a message along with it. "I love you and miss seeing you. Let your mom help spend this money. You might want to put some away. Maybe sometime soon we'll get to see each other. I bet I won't even know you, it's been so long. Mind your mother. Bye, Dad." Matthew, the elder son, explained, "Initially you think, okay, this won't last long, he'll be back. Sadly, that never happened. He devastated us. He left us with nothing, absolutely nothing. I was very broken," said Linda. Her vehicle was taken by the bank, and the worst part was that there were some suspicious people trying to intervene in her life. One day when Linda's parents visited her to console their daughter, they noticed a recording device right on the side of the telephone. This meant that someone was listening to Linda's calls. These were scary days for her. Sometimes she noticed things placed in her home differently than before, which meant that someone had been there. And the dangerous thing is, it wasn't the police. Linda started to notice that the mail she received was opened and resealed. Someone was trying to know if Richard was getting in touch with the family or not. She contacted the police, and yes, they were still trying to track Richard, but the cops were not after Linda anymore. This made it very clear that Richard had taken money from other sources too. And now these people were behind Linda and her sons. Linda's home was foreclosed by the bank, and she had nowhere to go. 11 years of marital life vanished in front of her eyes. She had to do something to decrease the constant threat that she felt was surrounding her sons and herself now. "When you're in that situation, you become very paranoid," explained Linda. She left the town and settled in McCordsville, Indiana, and tried to keep her address a complete secret. All she wanted was her son's safety. Her sons were already going through emotional trauma after their super dad abandoned them. Linda updated her parents' address on all the bills. She minimalized her contact with all her relatives and friends. She stayed in touch with one friend, and that too for a reason. Linda gave her friend's address and her son's school. Therefore, the bus picked them up and dropped them at that place. She didn't leave any clues behind for those suspicious people to find her. Linda was now only supported by her parents. Her mother said, "She's our daughter and I'm her parent, and I had to help her." For 10 years there was no clues about Richard, and he was finally declared deceased by the court. Trying to give their kids the love of a father and complete their family, Linda remarried, although it affected her younger son, Doug, severely. 23 years after Richard abandoned his family, Linda was living a different life with her new husband. Also, her sons grew up, but the wounds that Richard gave them left scars on them forever. During the summer of 2016, however, one voicemail brought Linda an utter shock. It was Detective Anthony Cardillo of the Pasco County Sheriff's Department, Florida, on the call, and he asked, "Do you know who Richard Hoagland is?" The detective told her that Richard was alive and in their custody for identity theft. He was living in West Palm Beach, Florida, with a dead man's identity. As if Linda got to know enough, Richard had betrayed her family to a greater extent. Richard was living in a rented home after leaving his family, and that's where he discovered a death certificate in the name of Terry Szymanski. In 1991, Terry, a fisherman, passed away in a work-related accident. Richard got in touch with Terry's father, who got emotional and shared his deceased son's info with Richard. "My dad was grieving and pouring his heart out," recalled Cynthia Bujnak, Terry's sister. She further added, "My dad was the victim. Even after 23 years, the truth will always come out." Using that death certificate, he applied for a birth certificate. He submits that birth certificate to get a driver's license. Once he has that driver's license, he starts establishing himself as Terry Szymanski, the detective said in an interview. According to the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, Terry was a perfect candidate for identity theft for Richard. Ohio people never got a clue that they were helping Richard in his frauds when they issued him Terry's birth certificate. This further helped him in getting a driver's license from Alabama. Later, he got a Florida license. This lasted for 2 decades. The Pasco County Sheriff's Office in Florida explained, "Since 1994, the defendant has exclusively used the victim, Terry Szymanski's identity for everything. The defendant obtained a private pilot's license, got married, had a child, opened and used numerous credit cards, applied for and was granted multiple mortgages for homes with his wife." This made up the life of Richard was finally reported when Terry Szymanski's real-life nephew was researching his family's history on Ancestry.com. His nephew shared this information with his family members who were uncertain about it. It took them more than 3 years before they reached out to the police. Richard remarried and earned good money. He even bought a house and had a son from his second marriage. The detective stated, "The son came down. He was shocked. It was still his father. It's his blood, but that Szymanski name is not his." The emotions they were feeling were between anger and sadness and the wonder of why. "This is a selfish coward. This is a person who's lived his life destroying others," said Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco. Detective Anthony stated, "He told me his name was Terry Szymanski, provided me a driver's license. Terry Szymanski, correct date of birth, everything. I asked him again. He said his name's Terry Szymanski. Eventually, I showed him the death certificate that I'd brought with me. He eventually told me his real name was Richard Hoagland." Sadly, Linda couldn't claim any money that Richard had stolen from her, as the law states that if the theft had taken place more than 5 years ago, the thief cannot be charged. But he cannot escape from the charges of identity theft of Terry Szymanski. Linda told, "My heart goes out to them. We know what they're doing, though. We do express our sympathy and empathy to them. I'm sorry." Linda's youngest son, Doug, was in jail when Richard was caught, and he had some questions for his father. Doug was serving an 8-year jail term for drug usage. He wrote a letter to his so-called dad, who abandoned him, and said, "For a long time I wondered what was wrong with me and what would warrant someone being able to just walk away. What was so bad that you had to disappear?" Matthew, too, could never forget what had happened and how miserable their childhood became just because of their father's mistake. Doug's now completed his jail term and lives a happy life. Matthew, too, is married and has children. He said, "The impact of my dad's actions has affected all of us over the years, and we still deal with it and carry it on a daily basis." The only question that remained was what caused all this and how things went out of Richard's hands. What did he need so much money for? What went wrong in the first place? Everyone wanted to know. Linda wanted to know. "I believe he got caught up with the wrong people. Got carried away and over his head in something," said Matthew. "He didn't want his past to affect his children anyhow." After serving 2 years in prison for identity theft, Richard was released. Richard went to Indiana as he had to present in front of the court where Linda sued him for approximately $2 million in unpaid child support. Richard has no assets to pay this money even when Linda won the case. What hurts the most is that Richard never bothered to apologize to any of the two families. Matthew knows what his father did to his family, and now he makes sure that he should not do any such mistakes in his life. He tries hard to be a good father, and we hope the same. After so many ups and downs, Matthew is finally able to live a normal life.